welcome everyone to the Alliance of Angels webinar. Thank you everyone for choosing to spend time with us. We have a great set of speakers today to tell us about the investment opportunities for 5G. The session will be led by Jim, who's the head of the 5G Open Innovation Lab, which you're going to no doubt learn a lot more about over the course of this following hour. Just some quick logistics. If folks are if you're not interacting with the speakers, we ask that everyone please stay on mute. Right? I'm sure your kids are cute, your dog's adorable, but they don't have to be part of our session today. We let everyone just stay quiet so we can all have a great learning experience together. But that said, if you have any questions for our speakers at any time, feel free to speak up. Right? This is a standard Zoom meeting. Everyone can participate. If you don't want to voice out your questions, you can also type into the chat window if you prefer to go that way. All right, so before we start, I'll just start with a few words about the Alliance of Angels. My name is Jane, and I run this organization. There's 140 angel investors in the group. Every year we put about 10 million into 20 companies. Most companies that are fundraising from us, they're looking for a total of between $500,000 and 1.5. And my typical check size is 250 to 500. We are a sector agnostic investor. Although about half of our investments are IT, a quarter are consumer, the rest is life sciences and hardware, etc. And we are also a stage agnostic investor. It's never too early to start getting in touch with us. And sometimes I've heard from folks, wondering whether any investing is going on during the current public health situation. The truth is that we are just as active as ever. Last year, we put more money into companies, just as much money into companies as we did in prior years, right? So if you are out there fundraising, you're interested in having a chat with us, feel free to send me an email. Or maybe you're an angel investor and you're interested in learning more about our group, feel free to send me a note as well. So my email is right here at the bottom of this slide. All right, and with that, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to invite our Jim to share his screen, start his presentation, and hand the session over to him. Jim.
Excellent. Thank you, Jane, for the opportunity to come back and present part 2 of investing in 5G and trying to understand the 5G opportunity. For those of you who had joined our first session, I believe that session has been recorded and is on the Alliance of Angels YouTube video. We took an exploratory view of where the opportunity is in 5G, what really is 5G, and some interesting areas of use cases. Well, at the 5G Open Innovation Lab, we've had the chance to actually work with some pioneering companies, and we've invited 4 of them along today. I thought today's session would be great to transition from the what is of 5G to companies who are actually pursuing enterprise use cases where 5G and computing on the edge will be important to them longer term. And so with that, just a quick refresher. Let me see, here we go. There's several investment scenarios that I had shared in our first session, and they involve digital transformation, private cellular networks, which is where enterprises are essentially building today their own private 4G LTE networks to cover campuses or areas, and in future 5G networks. Automation is a pretty big opportunity that we're seeing as well, where latent performant networks would be critical. You're going to hear from Dirk Schau today from Taqtile around immersive experiences and how I think that 5G and the networks that are being built today are really going to enable these high fidelity experiences and stuff that Dirk and his team have been really pursuing. And then of course, with the over 25.9 billion devices forecasted by the GSMA to be connecting into 5G networks in the next 4 years, security is going to be paramount. The piece that we love about this journey at the 5G Open Innovation Lab is the unknown, the use cases, the crazy Uber stories that before Uber, you would have never thought that would be a viable business model, but circumstances change, new market opportunities present themselves, and here at the lab, we're very focused on uncovering what those are through our network of founding partners as well. And so with that, before we jump in, there was just a couple of quick updates that I wanted to share with you all. If you caught the news last week, we've actually launched our own field labs. These are standalone 5G environments. They're located in Snohomish County. We partner with literally every one of our founding partners on standing these networks up. We have a three-legged stool analogy of how we've operated the lab. The first is the innovation side, and you're going to get a flavor for that today with some of our companies. The middle stool is really the platform stool, and that's that is represented by our strong partnerships with T-Mobile and Intel and F5 Networks and Microsoft and Dell and VMware and Amdocs. And then the other leg is the industry leg. So it's all great to talk about what 5G is, and for our founders, the benefits of what could be coming, but we never really had a commercially grounded environment where we could actually work hand in hand, in this case with growers, to not only expose our startups to 5G networks that are commercial, but also to work alongside commercial operators, in this case, 2 agriculture farms in Snohomish County. And so we're really pleased about what's to come with our field labs, and you'll start to hear more about that in the next little while. We have, since we've launched the program, you're going to see 4 of them today, but we've had the privilege to work with 32 great companies, and our companies really span the gamut of fundraising from pre-seed to Series B. In fact, our next batch 3, that's kicking off in a couple of weeks on March 1st, we're going to have some pretty big companies that hopefully will be part of that program. Stay tuned for those announcements shortly. Now, before I transition to Dirk from Taqtile to lead us on a presentation about Taqtile, there's actually 3 quick points I wanted to land. The first is, despite everything you're hearing about 5G and how great it is, we're not there yet. We, not in the United States, but we around the world, haven't really seen the maturation of 5G networks. It's not as pervasive today as you'll see it be with 4G LTE networks today. And that's because when new generations of wireless protocols are announced, it's usually a 10 to 15 year journey from its early adoption days to hits critical mass and mainstream to new standards come in and take over. And so I wanted to share with you the adoption curve that the University of Michigan has plotted, not just to talk about 4G LTE, but they've done a great job of plotting different technologies as well, from IoT to autonomous vehicles and others along this curve. From an industry perspective, this journey for 5G is not going to be too dissimilar from the journeys we've seen between 3G and 4G and now 4G LTE. Those journeys are 15 plus years, and you can see from that top chart that we're really in the early stages of 5G, and we're sort of cresting at where 4G LTE is today. That's a reality that not many people see on a day-to-day basis. The last that I wanted to land here was an excerpt from a McKinsey study that I read last week that really talked about the enterprise advantages that 5G is expected to create an impact on. And you can see in the middle there that the financial benefits assumed to be forecasted here is somewhere between 1.2 to $2 trillion. Now, if you heard and were present in the last presentation that I did, you probably picked up on the very strong point that I was making, is that 5G will have a strong consumer bent to it, but really where the investments are going to be driven primarily from is the enterprise. And all of the companies you're going to hear today, and all of the companies we've had the privilege to work with through the 5G Open Innovation Lab, are very much focused on where the future of the enterprise is going and how better connectivity with 5G and computing on the edge will play a role in that. And so with that, I've invited 4 of our companies. They're all Pacific Northwest based entities. We have other companies from outside of the state, outside of the United States, in Europe and Tel Aviv as well. But these 4 are really on some bleeding edge opportunities. And so I've invited Steve Mantle, who is the founder and CEO of EndtoEnd, Minsu Lee, who's also the co-founder and CEO of Bluebox. Eric is the co-founder of Transparent Path, but Sunil is the CTO, and Sunil has come on board. Eric's actually meeting with a fairly significant customer today, so unfortunately he wasn't able to make it. And then Dirk Shao, who I mentioned earlier, is the co-founder and CEO of Taqtile. Again, all of these companies are based here in the Pacific Northwest. And so with that, Dirk, I'd like to hand it over to you.
Great, thanks, Jim. Hi, everyone. You may recognize me from June of 2018 when we presented to Alliance of Angels. Our platform is designed to deliver knowledge when and where you need it. So what our product is called Manifest. Manifest is, in effect, it's digital transformation for frontline workers. As we think about the knowledge worker, we think, this. Let me actually confirm that my screen is projecting. Okay, great, thanks. as knowledge workers, most of us are not, if not all of us are knowledge workers. We've had all the tools that we've needed for our entire careers. Let's just sort of call it Microsoft Office or some version of that, right? These tools have fundamentally digitally changed the way that we do our work and the way that we interact with data and information. Frontline workers or deskless workers don't have that, but that is emerging rapidly through the use of head-mounted computers, augmented reality computers. Manifest is a breakthrough authoring and enabling tool that allows experts to very easily create step-by-step instructions overlaid on real-world equipment using augmented reality. Headsets, tablets, mobile, etc. In these instructions, each step can be conveyed via text, video, images, schematic, holograms, and other manners. And while a person is in a job doing something with Manifest, it's very easy for them to connect to other workers remotely, experts. So, hey, I'm working on this particular piece of equipment. I need some help from Sally, who is in New York. I can call her, show her my screen, and directly in there get guided step-by-step instructions. The goal is for or undertrained workers to be able to operate, maintain, repair, inspect equipment as if they were an expert. So we think about augmented reality and virtual reality as a training platform, but our perspective on this is, how does this change the way that companies operate? How do you enable people to do things that they weren't trained for? And if you don't need to be trained for things, how does that change the way that enterprises think about hiring, managing, evaluating, et cetera? So this is really about industrial digital transformation. Again, Manifest is about task guidance and on-the-job training. It's about understanding contextual data overlaid on top of real-world equipment or in a very natural and innate way for a worker, and how then can you visualize data? How better can you collaborate with your team in a very seamless environment? So as we're all sitting here and we have Teams and we have Zoom and we have all this stuff, and all we have to do is have that thought, and I can send a chat off to Jim, and I know within 2 minutes I'm going to get a response. That's not the way that it works on the front line, but it will be in the very near future. Now, I pulled a couple of things from a really great report from Booz Allen Hamilton, who's one of our great partners, specifically focused on DoD, and basically how we are thinking about, Jim mentioned Uber, right? Uber was a result of 4G and LTE. That company couldn't have existed without that. What are the things that 5G are going to enable? And as Jim indicated, it really starts, 5G is great when you talk about the public network and all of the carriers are going after it, but enterprises are digging deep into 5G and how they can enable their workers in completely new ways, understanding data, enabling processes, doing just-in-time whatever. There's a really amazing ecosystem that's sort of coming out about this. And if you think that this is still sort of pipe dream, real money is starting to get spent on this. So in October, we were part of an award, again, with our partner Booz Allen Hamilton, by the Department of Defense, that announced a $600 million 5G initiative. This is just $600 million to experiment and test 5G across 5 different bases, one of those being Joint Base Lewis McChord. And if you think about 5G, you can think about 5G as sort of a solution. Well, what are the problems? The problems are how do you get low latency, high bandwidth connectivity to people in the field? That is the problem. The problem of augmented reality worker enablement is the problem. And so Manifest, our platform, is the platform that's going to be used to test all of this infrastructure. There's broad applicability of this technology across a variety of verticals and of specific sort of jobs. And if you look at the areas that I'm talking about here, many of these are either in out there in the field or in massive factories where running cable and or Wi-Fi is extremely expensive, extremely difficult to manage, and potentially impossible. So we think of 5G as being truly transformational for our market. Just a little example of some of our customers here. We have a lot more, but we have customers in defense, oil and gas, pharmaceuticals, manufacturing. We have customers on 6 continents at this point. We were Microsoft's Partner of the Year for 2020. That takes us up to 2021. Beat out companies like Bosch and Siemens and ABB and stuff like that. So we're very, very proud of that. That's a real quick wrap up of Taqtile. If anyone wants any more details, please feel free to reach out to me. And again, I'll be hanging around for any questions that folks may have, but appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dirk. Minsu, if you want to get ready to share your slides, please feel free to. But Dirk, while we're waiting for Minsu to load his slides, one thing that I think we've hit a pivot point on is early days, AR, VR. Those were really early and interesting technologies, but it was kind of looking for use cases. What I love about what you guys have done with Taqtile is you're on literally on the front lines where the platform and Manifest is creating capabilities for frontline workers in a really real way. This isn't an experiment anymore. It really is production grade. Would you see that being the case given all the experiences you've had?
I mean, absolutely. A lot of the AR based scenarios started to really evolve with AR Kit and AR Core on mobile, which we fully support. That doesn't change the fact that if you're using a phone or a tablet, you're holding it, right? The goal is for when all the knowledge really shows up in the headsets. And 2.5 years ago, when we met with Alliance of Angels last, there was one headset on the market. It was the HoloLens. There's been about 2 years of pent-up demand because of supply issues from the headset manufacturers and, of course, because of COVID. But in the last 3 months or so, we've just seen an absolute explosion of this and an explosion of enterprise spending. There was a Forbes article that came out about us last week. We're doing a whole lot with T-Mobile. Jim, you'll be very excited to see what comes out on March 1st with us and T-Mobile. So yeah, I mean, this is absolutely a technology where enterprises are starting to deploy this. Like we've been working on proofs of concepts and pilots up until about the fall of last year. Now people are starting to deploy these into the hundreds of seats. And there's, by the way, there's over 100 OEMs working on headsets right now. Most, if not all of those headsets will be connected via 5G.
Awesome. Thank you, Dirk. Appreciate it. Minsu, did you want to go ahead and present on Bluebox?
Yeah. Sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you, Dirk. We'll circle back with some questions near the end of the session today.
So yeah, the deck I have prepared is more pitch and product oriented, and gonna remove a few slides, and I was hoping to talk about the infrastructure side. I hope that's okay.
Fine.
So yeah, Minsu, CEO of Bluebox, and we're building the personal co-pilot for working drivers. So we're essentially adding edge compute to existing cars for 169, empowering and adding empowering software modules for working drivers, for example, DoorDash or Uber drivers. So I was a Lyft driver myself, and many in our team actually was a delivery driver themselves also. And the risk variety of kind of chaotic consideration go into their day-to-day task, from risk of accidents and unjust terminations where the burden of proof is on them, to tax deduction losses, to expensive maintenance bills. And we're building the one-stop shop that essentially has general purpose computer that enables Tesla-like software capabilities for all existing cars with apps that address daily pain points of working drivers. So we started off with three apps that are running in the platform. So Dashcam, MileSaver, and Blue Mechanic. So Dashcam is pretty self-explanatory, recording video outside and inside for evidence. And mile saver, so for Uber and Lyft, for example, they don't track all the miles that you drive that you need for 1099. So in the 1099 that they provide, they only track when the passenger is inside the car, not when you're picking up new passenger, going home, getting gas, etc. So we find up to $15,000 of tax deductions that's not counted automatically by plugging into the vehicle. And the same story goes for all 1099 operators such as DoorDash and contractors. And obviously their vehicle is their livelihood, and Blue Mechanic automatically provides free engine diagnostics and maintenance advice to save even on the check engine light cost. And the new product that we're adding in for the launch that's coming in 2 months or so is security camera. So break-in detection when you're away from the vehicle, and live streaming right now with LTE to your phone of exactly what's happening. So context-wise, I think it would be best to just show a quick demo video. I'll skip around. So that's a unit installed in the vehicle on the windshield like this. And then plugs into the OBD2 port that's available in every car made after 1996. And the app looks like this. So you can see the home screen with a few different cars. Okay, I don't know what happened there. So browsing into Dashcam, you can see the footage that's available. Oh boy. Footage available. Blue Mechanic for diagnostic, as well as MileSaver that you can easily categorize and export for IRS compliant log. Anywho, so right now we're targeting 14 million working drivers in the US, basically all 1099 drivers, but with expandability that the platform provides, not just consumer or prosumer, but also enterprise fleet looking for this solution. Customized apps or such, we're looking to expand the software applications that the platform runs, and eventually, yeah, I'll skip that part. So for the initial traction, we went out to the Uber and Lyft lot and with a pot of coffee, showed a demo, and was able to build organic word of mouth. So we sold out all 25 units that we had at the lot in December 2019, and was able to raise a pre-seed earlier last year to finish the commercial version of the product. And on the hardware side, if you go to Amazon or and look up just Dashcam or OBD gadget, you'll see hundreds of different results. But it's kind of like comparing like a MP3 player or alarm clock that you might have had to a smartphone running these apps inside. for example, motor safety is a $40 and $20 a month subscription service for teenage driver monitoring. Obviously, that's something that we can integrate and also with additional features such as computer vision. And the 169 is a light, but we also have a same board, different variant that is AI version. So lots of the customers that we talk to hundreds of working drivers at this point. They're looking for features such as driver distraction monitoring because it is a very demanding work. To, for example, passengers in the back taking off their mask and not being able to constantly check. So the computer vision capabilities the AI version provides at the edge is obviously really valuable, and with the infrastructure, this just gets better. Hardware AI version is also integrated with this open source project called OpenPilot that provides vehicle control for existing cars. So highway autonomy is included in the AI version as well. I'll skip the team slide. But we have an amazing team that amazing small team that made something beautiful in a very constrained past few years, I guess. So we've done a lot with very little, was able to really focus on the customers and iterate the product to the point where we feel very confident about the value it provides and the roadmap that we have going forward. So yeah, the current plan is to launch on the Kickstarter in 2 months and really scaling that out. But on the 5G side, essentially, what I'm really focused on is the AI edge. So that really depends on the infrastructure that you build. It's not about just vast quantity of data. It's really about having the right edge compute to be able to test these models in the real world and being able to collect data whenever it fails. So that kind of curation of data. So obviously the 5G infrastructure, as our own infrastructure kind of scales up, will be a core component of that for bandwidth as well as the cost-related reasons. And yeah, we're really looking forward to getting that part of the journey started. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Minsu. There was a question that came up around the data gathering. Are you reselling 100% of the data flow generated inside the car and vehicle sensors?
That's not the plan right now. We're not actually going to be selling the data, video data, for example, to a third party, but we will be using them to make the product better for our customers. Great.
And then when we first met over a year ago now, you had said something to me then, I wanted to requalify it here as well, which was hardware was really a necessity, but your goal is to really focus on software, right? So Bluebox is focused on the software, but you had to, out of necessity, create the hardware platform. Is that still the case?
Yeah, so our proof of concept unit was literally a Raspberry Pi and a 3D printed case and off-the-shelf components that really didn't go beyond that initial step. So yeah, if there's a platform available out there that we can integrate it to, we would have happily done that. That wasn't an option, so we had to go with this option. But yeah, the hardware is thankfully done at this point. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to focusing on that part.
Great, and I'm excited about some of the autonomous capabilities you just showed there with in your slide. So thank you for doing that. That's an exciting part of your next chapter.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. All right. Well, Sunil from Transparent Path, did you want to go ahead and present?
Sure. Can you guys see the slide? Let me just, okay, let me just put it into full screen mode. And it looks like our CEO, Eric, did join us. And also before we start, I just want to thank Alliance of Angels and also Jim for giving us the opportunity to present today. And I'll have Eric start off and then I'll continue on with the presentation. So Eric, I don't know if you are able to say something.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us here today. We'll try to go through this really quickly. The thing that we're trying to solve for specifically is filling in the holes in the supply chain from a data perspective. Sunil, I wonder if I should just go ahead and share my screen so I can quickly click through it.
Sure, let me just stop sharing my screen so that you have access.
Sorry, folks. I had a meeting with Pepsi, which I was super excited about, but internet connection caused problems. So we're trying to fill in these holes. Our team is composed of expats who've been around the block, working for food, tech, and supply chain companies. We've got some amazing people on our team, including the former head of supply chain for Amazon and head of last mile logistics for Amazon. So this is our focus. We are bringing real-time end-to-end visibility to the supply chain for high-value perishables. So food and pharma, the things that are the most critical, things that go into our bodies, whether it's nutrition or whether it's wine or a COVID vaccine. These are the things that we're tracking because they have a big impact. And maintaining cold chain compliance and maintaining cold chain continuity is hugely important. And right now you would be stunned, shocked, horrified to know how little of that exists from a global perspective. We have many trucking companies, many industries that are out there are still running on paper. They still are using file cabinets. Drivers are walking with paper receipts. IBM has estimated that there's 30 to 100 paper documents per import shipment. I didn't know you could buy fax machines. Evidently, they're highly used in the supply chain. We don't know about things in the supply chain until the past. And I don't know if you can see in my camera here, these are the typical trackers that are thrown into the back of a load of food. They gather data and then they save it mostly for insurance claims. But if a $400,000 load of crab meat is spoiling, we don't know in real time until it's all gone. And then you've got a trailer full of food waste, which is really the sort of social purpose that we're working towards. There's a million dashboards, there's a million systems, none of them talk to each other. And that is a huge problem because we can't see end to end in the supply chain when everyone is covering their own butts with their own specific platform. And then finally, there's a lot of load rejection from Walmart, for example, rejects on average 14% of all of their loads, which go straight into a landfill. And again, food waste is a huge part of what we're trying to solve for. We do it through, we do this through sensors provided to us by our partner Intel, who was introduced to us through the lab. Thank you, Jim. And they've been an amazing partner for us. So we've gone ahead and integrated their hardware into our platform. And Sunil, why don't you talk a little bit about 5G and why it's important for us?
Yeah, so from can everybody hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. So from overall perspective, 5G is very critical in the sense that once we start getting the data, especially from multiple devices, we want to be able to leverage the high bandwidth of 5G to use all of that data for our own AI analysis. And then once you start, I guess, piling on other types of media, such as video for computer vision, that type of a thing, it's going to take a lot more bandwidth to enable that to happen, especially when we're dealing with edge computing and also AI, and also when we have blockchain implemented. All of those will leverage greatly from the 5G technology that's going to be coming out, or that has come out.
Cool, thanks, Sunil. And one thing that we're particularly interested too is the idea of going with a printed sensor. This is why Transparent Path got started. My colleagues at Xerox PARC had developed printed temperature and humidity sensors, and there was an opportunity I saw to commercialize this and roll this out across Xerox customers who were all clamoring for this kind of solution rather than super expensive devices. And so we just onboarded, or are onboarding, one of the world's top scientists for doing printed sensor technology. And it's in our roadmap to chase funding to go ahead and do the R&D and get that into production within the next 18 months. This is a huge addressable market. There's so much space in this market. And if you look for the various market studies that are out there, most of them were launched for the first time in 2020. So this idea of COVID really exposed the fragility of our supply chains, and consequently, there's all these market research reports now about the market and the CAGR and the growth opportunities there. IDC, in partnership with IBM, did a study over the last 3 years around collaborative supply chain tech, such as ours, end-to-end visibility tech, and saw 335% ROI. And so you can see here, we apply the devices at the time of load. We monitor temperature, humidity, light, tilt, shock, air pressure, etc. When things start to go sideways, we fire off an alert to the custodian of that product, whoever's got the contract of carriage, so they can go fix it, and we cannot lose that load. And then if you are a compliant partner and you've done your job and you've met your SLAs, then you have proof of delivery, proof of compliance, and Walmart can't sort of strong arm you to get a lower price because you can prove that you delivered fresh, quickly, and within compliance. But if we lose a load of food or a load of vaccine or whatever, we can alert the entire supply chain when it happens so no one receives it. So imagine you're getting a COVID vaccine is arriving at a hospital, but there's been a break in the cold chain. We want everyone to know that, because right now there's a lot of obfuscation, there's a lot of shifting blame, there's a lot of, I don't know, that wasn't me, you know, there's a lot of people being people. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we're getting products to the buyers that are truly what they say they are. You can see here our dashboard where we're monitoring what the risk is that's ongoing at any particular time. Where are the failure points, and who do I hold accountable if something goes sideways? So whether it's food producers or cold chain logistics partners or retailers, the benefits are this end-to-end visibility. If we or when we roll out these sensors, and here's an example of a device, a printed device that is still a little big. We want to get it down to the size of that sticker right there, about 1 inch. But this is where we're going. We can track at a very granular level. So we can track at the package level or the crate level, not the container level. It's a platform as a service, so there's no CapEx. And the shippers, the producers of the food and pharma products can get a higher price point at the sales desk because it's going to be proven fresh and compliant, et cetera. We have a number of different competitors. I won't go into this too much, but basically we feel like we've got an edge, even though we're a tiny, scrappy little startup. And the thing I'm most excited about is when we get this done, these will be compostable sensors, water soluble, graphene oxide ink, so that we're not adding all this plastic and lead and solder to the waste stream. So I'm very excited about that. We kicked off our first commercial pilot with Feeding the Northwest. I can now announce them, part of the Feeding America network. So we're not only helping track perishables for Feeding the Northwest, but we're also helping with food insecurity, which, as you all know, is a huge deal right now. And we've got a lot of interest from entities in Oman who we're speaking to right now, saffron companies who want to provide proof of provenance, insurance, and container tracking. So I won't go into all this stuff. I don't know if this is the kind of thing that I should be sharing right now or not, but we're doing a Reg CF raise right now to keep the lights on. We're chasing an angel round, and we're looking to build out $3 million over 24 months to be able to scale our production and our technology primarily. So that is us.
Thank you, Eric and Sunil. I appreciate it. There's a couple of questions that came through. I can ask one of them now. Steve, if you'd like to go ahead and load your presentation, I'll ask the question. The question came around unions. Are you running into any issues, Eric, with unions looking at this technology as a competitive threat to their roles?
Are you talking labor unions specifically?
Yeah.
We are seeing resistance from folks who worry about being tracked by the government. I've had drivers tell me, I throw these out the window the minute I see them because the government is not going to track me. And I'm like, dude, I just care about the food. I don't care about you. I've had people say, is this a bomb? Because they see a red light blinking. And things that we as tech enthusiasts would think we were kind of ridiculous. Those are real world things that we have to deal with in terms of education and to get acceptance. So we're not running into resistance from them, but we're learning we have a much bigger hurdle in terms of bringing folks on board with this new technology. Now, many of the bigger carriers are finding no problems with this because the drivers just know this is the new world we live in. However, there's an explosion of 3PLs and independent freelance drivers and independent freelance shipping companies that must be managed, who are the jury's out on that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We'll circle back with some other questions, Eric and Sunil. Thank you again for that. Steve, last presentation, my friend, go for it.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Well, nice to meet everybody. I'm Steve Mantle, EndtoEnd Ag, and we are an ag tech startup based out of Eastern Washington. Our focus ultimately on agriculture is tied into the challenges around food resiliency and pressures on feeding the world, population growth, and food availability and water availability really being out of sync as we look ahead over the next decade. When you look for the actual overall space, the market opportunity in agricultural technology and precision farming is there's a huge explosion in on-farm devices with data collection. You've seen kind of some earlier examples that you can infer from where that's happening in farms as well. With that, there's huge fragmentation on the data, and we have some growers that are saying that they're needing to use as many as 19 apps to make their day-to-day decisions. And realistically, we're all human. You can't really effectively make decisions if you've got this data sprawl going on. We're also seeing further down the supply chain, manufacturers and distributors and retailers, kind of to Transparent Path's point, are lacking access to grower sustainability metrics. And so we're looking to capture that all the way in where the growing is happening and tie that in all the way through the supply chain with partners. We're focused on high value crops, initially with apples, but also berries and nuts. And the commonality with all of these is that they have a high labor. 60% of costs typically are labor. Another 15 to 20% are on chemical. And then a lot goes into water usage as well. If you look at almond trees, for instance, to grow an almond actually takes several gallons of water just for a single almond. And so huge opportunity there to help as there are increasing pressures on that precious resource. So you can see the CAGR numbers there to see that this space is definitely growing dramatically. Our focus ultimately is bringing the data together from these many different data sources into a data warehouse. And so having the data pipeline to do that, establishing digital twins, basically, so that we can, I'll show you an example of how we connect the dots between the physical world and virtual instantiation of that, building a dynamic data model library in partnership with land-grant university researchers, such as Washington State University and OSU, which we're partnered with as in collaboration with the 5G Open Innovation Lab as well. But ultimately, it's about providing insights, actionable insights to the grower so that they can make decisions and control around irrigation and chem orders and variable rate applications and managing pests and what resource should be positioned where, and that includes equipment, but it also includes people. And so our capabilities today is being able to pull that together. We were asked last year to by the Washington Tree Fruit Research Commission, which represents all apple growers in the state, to run and operate a smart orchard and bring in many different data sources. And so we're doing that and have expanded that now to include the announcement last week with the Food Resiliency Project with 5G Labs up in Snohomish County. And so you can see some examples of different types of data that we bring together that's actionable for the grower. And then we really turn that into predictive offerings for the grower around helping them understand what their yield is going to be. So by looking at apple and bloom count, and then layering on different use cases on top of that. The picture of me on a ATV, on the back of that ATV, we have two cameras facing each direction, capturing 10 frames per second with strobes, as well as LiDAR and GPS data, and that's bringing that all together where effectively we can create what looks like a Google map of what the canopy, apple orchard canopy density looks like and distribution looks like. Every grower ultimately is striving toward uniformity. And so you can see on the yellows are lower numbers. Right now we're looking at canopy area. On the right-hand side, you can actually see what the LiDAR point cloud looks like for that part of the orchard. And then we can look at the same view, say, for height, and see where there's some challenges there across and where they may want to plan on having more ladders at picking or pruning or thinning time versus not. And then finally, we use machine learning ultimately to identify out of those images what that apple distribution is. And again, we can even do that to say, look, the top part of the tree, this is what the distribution looks like, and the bottom part of the tree. And these trees do actually get pretty tall, 12 to 15 feet. Then you can use more of a street view type zoom in where we can click on this and actually zoom right in. Keep in mind that this ATV was going at 25 miles per hour up and down these orchard rows. Where it ties in with 5G is we're collecting about 1 terabytes worth of data for every 20 acres. And really to efficiently process that information, we need edge computing and network bandwidth in order to be able to pull that together. Now, if we switch gears to really more enhanced views of this, I want to give a quick little demo of where we take that LiDAR point cloud view, and we've developed this using Unity, and it's tying into that same backend data warehouse that we have running. And because it's in Unity, we can run it in iOS and Android, and are working towards building AR extensions as well. And so now I can actually be able to zoom in around here in my point cloud, look around as a grower across any of my many acres. The larger growers that we're working with typically have several thousand acres, and they spend a lot of windshield time. So to be able to look across that point cloud and be able to zoom in and look at that is really quite important to them. Now we can then turn on a virtual view that really starts to bring it all together. And you can see here in real time the data that's feeding our sensors, and we can go around and take a look at the different types of crops that grower may have and some bar charts associated with that. Where you see the irrigation happening, that's tying in real time, that shows where IoT sensors are picking up pressure. And we go across to cherry trees, go over to vineyards, and let's say we go stop over here on an apple vineyard. Over the top of this sign is actually saying, do not enter this spot right now. Why is that? It's because it was recently sprayed by chemicals. So we can do an overlay here and check and see that it was sprayed a couple of days ago with hazardous chemicals, and it's not safe for humans to enter it until the next day, for instance. We have an index that ultimately brings all that data together to help the grower understand how they're doing from a profitability perspective. You can look at what the tree count looks like. Then there's a control aspect. And so we can, again, take a look at, say, irrigation. We could actually turn on the irrigation in the virtual world, but have that reflect out over to the physical world. And again, have that tie where different stakeholders can be really understanding what's going out across their acreage. The last couple of views here bring together sensor data. We're looking at what the soil moisture is in real time, as well as history. That's really critical for a grower to get that balance just right. That percentage that's listed is really at 2 feet deep in 4-inch increments all the way down to 2 feet. We capture that every 15 minutes over the CBRS network. We tie into pulling in nitrogen data so that we can understand what's going on fertilizer-wise. Further down, we can look at something called photosynthetic active radiation, basically to understand how much sunlight there is, and grower degree days, which is used for calculating data models on disease and pest risk. Last couple of views, a grower can look at then what are their financials per block. And so again, they could move across the different blocks, see how yield has varied year over year, what their financials actually look like at a glance, block by block or in aggregate. And then as I mentioned earlier, again, 60% of a grower cost in this space is around labor. And so understanding block by block which blocks need more labor versus next, what that has been historically, as well as what those projections are, is really quite critical. So we can zoom right back out to that LiDAR point cloud view, which will just bring us back to a closing slide. And that is, uh-oh, I'm lost in Zoom and PowerPoint. Here we go. There we go. Look, we started a year and a half ago. I left Microsoft after a dozen years there to really get hands-on in ag and bringing together data. Our path is working closely with universities, working closely with Microsoft on cloud computing and edge, working with IoT sensor partners and chemical companies as distribution partners to enable us to scale. And then we're already seeing interest from folks like Kroger, Walmart, PepsiCo, et cetera, as to how they can use this data to tie together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. One of the so I think it was last year, August, I had gone out to see that specific block that Steve was referencing, and keep me honest on it, Steve, but that particular grower during the growing season was spending, was it $5 million a month on chemicals?
In peak months, they spend $5 million per month on chemicals.
And I think it's fair to say, again, keep me honest, that because of the lack of data, they've had to overcompensate on irrigation, overcompensate on chemicals, because they just don't know what's really going on. And so the only way to safely produce food and hit the right mix of crop that they needed, they had to overcompensate. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, it's blanket, and it's really kind of an insurance policy because they don't have the level of data consolidated so that they can really understand across, say, 50 20-acre blocks, how should they apply differently based on what's going on in those respective microclimates.
Yeah. So ag is actually quite a big business. The tree fruit market here in Washington State is over $1 billion. Steve, I think it's 1.2 billion annually.
I believe it's over 2, and you're right. It's the largest crop for us, obviously in the state.
Yep.
Wheat is the next lowest, and that's at 400 million. So it's by a long shot.
Yeah. So it's actually quite big business. And one of the things that we're quite excited about with what Steve's done is Steve is aggregating data and making it usable for growers so they can be a lot more efficient with their operations. And we've now have these 2 test beds that Steve's been a big partner of ours here in Western Washington, where we can actually deploy this technology in a commercial setting with real impact. So thank you, Steve, for covering that off. I do think there was a couple of questions that may have come up. So this is probably a good time to break and open the floor for any Q&A for any of the startups or myself, if you have any.
Hi, this is Krishnan. I have a question for Bluebox's Minsu Lee. Minsu, so does the Bluebox require its own 5G subscription, or does it piggyback on the phone subscription from the driver?
Yeah, so it depends on the software that the driver is using. So for example, right now the 4 apps that's running in the platform, only one is really using the LTE as a core feature, the security guard when you're away from the vehicle and getting the security footage. So there will be an individual subscription for applications that's using LTE because some drivers, they are cost, the target that we have is price sensitive and we want to kind of give that customizability. So the same for the kind of enterprise expansion. So for example, we were connected with this company called in Korea that's working with the government to implement basically AI road infrastructure, and they're interested in purchasing the co-pilot. So that will also basically be like that custom application and the subscription attached to that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm just monitoring the chat window here in case there's one that we've missed. Oh, there was one from Mark, Eric and Sunil. I'll point this one to you. And this was around your competitors, but I think you've already covered that in the slide earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, and Mark and I have been going back and forth on private chat. But in a nutshell, the IoT in shipping has been around for decades. I remember in the 80s, it was really introduced. And talk about a fist fight over being tracked. And what we're doing, what we haven't seen is real-time supply chain in the present. It's always been supply chain in the past, because the truck arrives and the sensor that is in the back of the truck then tells you whether something's spoiled. Whereas our alerts basically say, give the driver a heads up to fix the load before anyone else knows, so that they can be the hero, and also not fight me. To David's point on, why are you tracking me? Why are you introducing bad technology and reporting to the government, et cetera?
So fun story, early days of Transparent Path. This will probably make you chuckle, Eric, if you remember, but you and Mark at the time initially came up with Transparent Path as a way of helping to combat the fairly lucrative fraudulent wine business, which annually is a $3 billion business. Is that correct?
It's a $30 billion business.
Okay. So these are poor people that are spending what, $10,000 to $20,000 a bottle of wine, and they're drinking vinegar, right? Or yellowtail, or
they're taking bottles and labels and they're creating the perfect counterfeit, and then they're drilling super microscopic holes in the real bottles, draining them and filling them with $2 chuck. There's some stories, if you do some searching. I'm not going to humiliate someone that can't defend themselves, but there's some folks who have invested millions in their wine cellars and found out that a lot of it's counterfeit, which would enrage me if I was
absolutely
so blessed. So yeah, and then pharma is an incredibly tragic thing with it's $40 billion fraud with fake heart meds, fake cholesterol. 160,000 kids dying globally from fake antibiotics. I mean, it's just stupid crap. So we're hoping to help fix some of that.
Okay. Well, Jin, thank you again for this opportunity for us to re-engage the Alliance of Angels community, and for us to bring 4 of the 32 great companies we've had a chance to work with. What I really was hoping to accomplish today was to depart from the what ifs and how will a 5G network of the future sort of change our lives, and actually ground it in some real companies that are doing things today. These 4 companies are great examples of companies that have use cases that will only be supercharged with where we believe 5G networks, both on the public side and the private side, tagged alongside edge computing, which you heard a lot about today. These are companies that are really pursuing that effort, and we've had the great privilege to work alongside them and others as well. And so with that, Jin, I'll give back the floor. We'd love to connect with anyone who has any questions. Clearly, you have access to our founders here today, and so if you'd like to follow up them directly, I encourage you to do so. And so with that, Eugene, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thanks for excuse me. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your time with us, and also for the 4 entrepreneurs for their pitches. And if anyone has any questions, wants to follow up with any other folks, Jim will be a great person to ping. I'm also happy to make connections as needed. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you all. Thank you, my teams. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Great session.